This happened almost 3 years ago when I was 22 and still in college. To make some extra money, I worked as a cashier at one of the largest supermarkets in my hometown. The supermarket was located right in the city center, a place always bustling with people. It was a Thursday like any other. The flow of customers was constant and varied, from families doing their weekly shopping to hurried individuals grabbing something quick for dinner. I was used to the routine, scanning items, chatting a bit with regular customers, and occasionally dealing with some odd situations. The store was busy as usual. People rushed in and out, kids ran through the aisles, and the incessant noise of shopping carts being pushed around filled the air. Everything seemed normal, but that night, something disturbing was about to happen. I was helping a customer pack their groceries when I heard a noise coming from one of the nearby lines. A man had dropped all his items on the floor and was struggling to pick them up. This wasn't unusual, but something about the uncoordinated way he moved caught my attention. He seemed disoriented, like he was under the influence of some drug. The other customers in line began to look uneasy, but I tried to focus on my work and stay calm. After all, I had dealt with strange people before. Little did I know that this night would be different from all the others. The noise of falling items drew my attention to the man struggling in the aisle. He had dropped everything he was carrying and was clumsily trying to gather the scattered items. It was immediately clear that he was under the influence of drugs. His movements were sluggish, and he seemed barely able to stay on his feet. People in the line started to whisper among themselves, some looking concerned and others annoyed. I tried to keep my focus on the customer I was helping, but I couldn't help glancing over at the man as he finally managed to collect most of his items and stumbled his way to my register. When he reached me, he dumped his handful of small items onto the counter. His eyes were bloodshot, and he reeked of alcohol. He mumbled something incomprehensible, and I had to ask him to repeat himself. He seemed frustrated but managed to mutter something about wanting to buy a single bag of candy. I scanned the item and told him the total. He fumbled with his pockets, looking for his wallet. His hands were shaking, and he dropped his wallet twice before finally getting it open. He first tried to pay with cash but didn't have enough. I could see the frustration building in his eyes as he then pulled out a credit card. He swiped the card but entered the wrong PIN. He tried again and failed. Each failed attempt made him more agitated. He began to raise his voice, drawing more attention from the other customers. My heart pounded in my chest, and I glanced towards the security guards, who were now watching the situation closely. On his third attempt, he finally managed to enter the correct PIN, and the payment went through. A wave of relief washed over me as I handed him the receipt and his bag of candy. He snatched it from my hand and staggered away from the register, muttering under his breath. As he walked away, I noticed the security guard starting to move towards him, clearly intending to escort him out of the store. Little did I know, this encounter was about to take a violent and terrifying turn. As the man left the counter, security approached him cautiously. Suddenly, he pulled out a knife and attacked the guards. Chaos ensued as customers screamed and fled. The guards wrestled the man to the ground, and he hit his head, bleeding profusely. Blood stained the floor as the guards subdued him, cuffing his hands behind his back. Sirens wailed in the distance, signaling the arrival of police and emergency responders. The supermarket fell into an eerie silence, filled only with the shocked murmurs of onlookers. I stood frozen behind the checkout counter, shaken by the sudden violence. The scene would haunt me for a long time, casting a shadow over the once familiar aisles of the store. Shaken to the core, I hesitated for a moment behind the checkout counter, my hands trembling uncontrollably. Despite the chaos and the lingering scent of fear in the air, I made a conscious decision to continue with my duties. With each customer I served, I felt a weight of unease settling over me, but I pushed through, determined not to let fear dictate my actions. Reflections. As the night wore on and the store gradually emptied of both customers and emergency responders, I found myself lost in reflections on the harrowing events that had unfolded. The sight of the man wielding a knife and the ensuing struggle haunted my thoughts relentlessly. Every noise made me jump. Every shadow seemed to conceal a potential threat. The unease lingered long after my shift ended. At home, I struggled to sleep, replaying the scenes in my mind and grappling with a profound sense of vulnerability. The once familiar aisles of the supermarket now felt tainted by the memory of violence. Despite my efforts to resume normalcy, the experience left an indelible mark on my psyche. It was a stark reminder of the fragility of safety and the unpredictability of human behavior. After the chaotic incident, the rest of the shift passed in a tense haze. I couldn't shake the image of the blood on the floor or the unsettling feeling that something worse was yet to come. My manager had asked me again if I wanted to go home, but I stubbornly decided to stay, trying to convince myself that I was strong enough to handle it as the clock neared midnight. I found myself alone in the store, finishing up the closing procedures. The eerie silence of the empty supermarket was oppressive, every creak and groan of the building setting my nerves on edge. I tried to shake it off, attributing my heightened anxiety to the earlier events. I was counting the cash in the register when I heard it, the faintest sound of shuffling footsteps. My heart leapt into my throat, and I glanced around, seeing nothing but the dimly lit aisles. "Hello," I called out, my voice trembling. "Is someone there?" No response. I told myself it was just my imagination, or perhaps the security guards making their rounds. I returned to my work, trying to ignore the prickling sensation on the back of my neck. Minutes later, a cold draft swept through the store, causing the hairs on my arms to stand on end. I glanced towards the automatic doors, expecting to see them open, but they were closed. I stood up, clutching the cash tray, and cautiously walked towards the source of the draft. As I approached the checkout area, my blood ran cold. There, smeared in blood across the counter where the man had stood, was a single word: soon. I stumbled back, dropping the cash tray, coins clattering loudly on the floor. My mind raced, trying to comprehend what I was seeing. Had someone snuck in and done this? Was the man from earlier involved in something even more sinister? I grabbed my phone, dialing the number for security. The line rang and rang, but no one answered. Panic surged through me as I ran towards the back office, hoping to find anyone. As I rounded the corner, I nearly collided with one of the guards from earlier. Relief washed over me momentarily until I saw his face, pale and stricken with fear. "We need to get out of here," he whispered urgently, glancing around nervously. "There's someone in the store." Before I could respond, we heard it, a low, guttural growl echoing from the darkness of the aisles. We both froze, terror rooting us to the spot. The guard grabbed my arm, pulling me towards the exit. As we sprinted towards the door, I glanced back and saw them, figures shadowy and indistinct, emerging from the darkness. Their eyes glinted malevolently in the dim light, and they moved with an unnatural, jerky motion. We burst through the doors into the cool night air, and didn't stop running until we reached the street. My heart pounded painfully in my chest, and I could barely catch my breath. The guard fumbled for his radio, calling for backup, his voice shaking. Later, when the police arrived and searched the store, they found nothing. No blood on the counter, no figures lurking in the aisles. It was as if the entire horrifying episode had been a figment of our imagination. But I knew better. The look in the guard's eyes told me he had seen it too. And the word "soon" haunted my thoughts, a chilling reminder that the terror was far from over. I never returned to that supermarket. I quit my job the next day and tried to move on with my life. But the feeling of being watched, of impending doom, never truly left me. Every shadow seemed menacing, every noise a prelude to something terrible. Whatever it was, whoever they were, I knew they were still out there. And one day they would come for me.